You know, I've been counting the days. Not because I want to, but because someone has to. Day 1, we watched 900 targets get hit in 12 hours. Day 3, we learned Ayatollah Khamenei was dead. Day 7, Iranian missiles struck American bases across the Gulf. Day 10, oil crossed $100 a barrel. And now, Day 14, I woke up to news that should have every American paying attention. The USS Tripoli, an amphibious assault ship carrying 2,200 United States Marines, has been ordered to the Middle East on an emergency deployment. And the Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of the world's oil flows every single day, is now 94% closed to commercial traffic. Let me say that again, because I want it to sink in. 94%. That's not a disruption. That's not an inconvenience. That's a chokehold on the global economy. And most people scrolled right past that headline without understanding what it means. Now look, I've sat in that chair in the Oval Office. I've watched military operations unfold in real time. I've seen the best-laid plans survive contact with the enemy, and I've seen them fall apart within hours. And I can tell you, what I'm watching unfold right now has the fingerprints of something that was never supposed to happen. This was supposed to be an air campaign. Precise. Devastating. Over in days. And now, on day 14, we're sending Marines. We're watching Iran choke off global oil supplies with $50 drones. And nobody in Washington seems to have an answer for what comes next. So tonight, I want to walk you through what day 14 really means. Not the headlines, not the talking points, the reality. Because most people have no idea what's happening and what's about to happen if we don't change course. Let me start with what we know, because the facts matter more than ever. On day 14 of Operation Epic Fury, the Pentagon announced the emergency deployment of the USS Tripoli to the Middle East theater. The Tripoli is not just any ship. It's an America-class amphibious assault ship. It carries approximately 2,200 Marines. It has landing craft. It has helicopters. It has Osprey tilt-rotor aircraft. It has the capability to put boots on the ground. Now, I want you to think about what that means. For the first 13 days of this operation, the administration told us this was an air campaign. Defense Secretary Hegseth explicitly said this was a destruction mission, not a nation-building mission. He said we weren't going to put American troops on the ground. He said we'd learned the lessons of Iraq and Afghanistan. And now we're sending 2,200 Marines. The Pentagon says this is a precautionary measure. They say it's about protecting American assets in the region. They say it's about maintaining options. But I've been in this business long enough to know that when you move an amphibious assault ship into a combat zone, you're not maintaining options. You're creating them. And the option that ship creates is a ground invasion. Here's what concerns me. Congress never authorized this operation. Not the airstrikes on day 1. Not the escalating bombing campaign that's continued for 2 weeks. And certainly not the deployment of ground forces. The War Powers Resolution gives the President 60 days to conduct operations without explicit congressional authorization, but only in response to an actual or imminent attack. And every day that passes, every escalation that occurs, makes it harder to argue that this is still a defensive action responding to an imminent threat. We are watching mission creep happen in real time, and if history teaches us anything, it's that mission creep is how limited operations become forever wars. Now, let me talk about the Strait of Hormuz, because this is where the strategic picture gets truly alarming. The Strait of Hormuz is a narrow waterway between Iran and the Arabian Peninsula. It's about 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, and roughly 21 million barrels of oil pass through it every single day. That's 20% of global supply. When you control Hormuz, you have your hand on the throat of the global economy. For decades, Iran has threatened to close the strait if attacked. American military planners always assumed they could keep it open through naval superiority. We have the Fifth Fleet based in Bahrain. We have aircraft carriers in the region. We have the most powerful navy the world has ever seen. But here's what the Pentagon didn't fully anticipate. Iran didn't try to close the strait with warships. They didn't try to mine it with traditional naval mines that we could sweep. They did something far simpler and far more devastating. They started attacking commercial ships with drones. $50 drones, assembled from commercial components, launched in swarms from small boats and coastal positions, each one carrying just enough explosive to damage a tanker, to start a fire, to convince insurance companies that the risk isn't worth it. In the past week, At least 6 commercial vessels have been hit. A Thai-flagged cargo ship, a Liberian oil tanker, a container ship registered in Singapore. No ships have been sunk, but that's not the point. The point is that no shipping company, no insurance underwriter, no captain is willing to risk their vessel and their crew for a transit through what has become a shooting gallery. And so the traffic has stopped. 94% of commercial shipping through Hormuz has halted, not because Iran has physically blocked the strait, but because they've made it too dangerous to use. This is asymmetric warfare at its most effective. We spent $2 trillion on the most advanced military in human history. Iran is defeating our strategy with weapons that cost less than a laptop. Now, most people are going to switch off right about now. They're going to think they understand the situation. Air war turned into a longer operation. Some shipping disruption, gas prices going up. But if you stay with me, I'm going to show you why day 14 is the most dangerous day so far. Because what happens in the next 72 hours could determine whether this stays a limited conflict or becomes something much, much larger. Let me explain what the closure of Hormuz actually means for the global economy, because I don't think most people understand the scale of what's happening. 21 million barrels of oil per day. That's not just fuel for cars. That's the feedstock for plastics, for pharmaceuticals, for fertilizers that grow the food you eat. That's the energy that powers factories in China and Germany and Mexico. That's the lubricant that keeps the entire global supply chain moving. When you remove 20% of global oil supply overnight, prices don't just go up, they spike. As of this morning, Brent crude is trading above $112 a barrel. That's up from $68 the day before Operation Epic Fury began. And analysts are saying that if Hormuz stays closed for another week, we could see $150, maybe higher. What does that mean for ordinary Americans? It means $4 a gallon becomes $6. It means the cost of shipping everything from electronics to groceries goes up. It means inflation, which we've spent years trying to bring down, comes roaring back. It means the economy that was finally stabilizing could tip into recession. And here's the thing, none of this was supposed to happen. When the administration launched this operation, they promised it would be over quickly. They promised Iran's military would be destroyed. They promised we'd eliminate the nuclear threat once and for all. They did not promise that 2 weeks later, we'd be staring at an economic crisis because Iran figured out how to close the world's most important shipping lane with hobby drones. This is what happens when you plan for the war you want to fight instead of the war you're going to get. We planned for a high-tech air campaign against fixed targets. Iran planned for an asymmetric response against our economic vulnerabilities. And right now, Iran's plan is working better than ours. Let me tell you about the strategic miscalculation at the heart of this situation, because I think it's important to understand how we got here. The assumption behind Operation Epic Fury was that if we hit Iran hard enough, fast enough, they would be unable to respond effectively. We'd destroy their air defenses. We'd eliminate their missile launchers. We'd kill their leadership. And the regime would be so degraded that any retaliation would be minimal and manageable. That assumption was wrong. Not completely wrong. We did destroy significant portions of Iran's military infrastructure. We did kill Khamenei. We did eliminate much of the Revolutionary Guard leadership. But we made a critical error. We assumed that Iran's power came from its conventional military capabilities. It doesn't. Iran's power comes from its ability to project force through proxies, through asymmetric tactics, through the willingness to absorb punishment and keep fighting. The Houthis in Yemen are still launching missiles at Saudi Arabia and commercial shipping. Hezbollah, though degraded, still has tens of thousands of rockets pointed at Israel. Iranian-backed militias in Iraq are still attacking American positions. And Iran itself has demonstrated that it doesn't need a functional air force or a powerful navy to close the Strait of Hormuz. It just needs enough drones and enough willingness to use them. This is the lesson of every asymmetric conflict from Vietnam to Afghanistan. You can win every battle and still lose the war if you don't understand what kind of war you're fighting. Now, let me talk about the Marines, because this is where Day 14 becomes truly significant. The USS Tripoli and its 2,200 Marines are not being sent to the Gulf as observers. They're being sent because someone in the Pentagon has realized that air power alone cannot reopen the Strait of Hormuz. You can bomb every drone factory in Iran, but as long as small units can launch attacks from the coastline, commercial shipping isn't safe. There are really only two options for reopening Hormuz by force. Option 1 is a massive naval presence that can intercept every drone, protect every ship, and sustain that protection indefinitely. That would require more ships than we currently have in the region. It would require a level of coordination that's extremely difficult to maintain, and it would still leave our vessels vulnerable to attack. Option 2 is ground forces. Marines who can seize Iranian coastal positions, who can clear the launch sites, who can establish a buffer zone that keeps drones out of range of the shipping lanes. The deployment of the Tripoli suggests that option 2 is now on the table, and that should terrify everyone. Let me be clear about what a ground operation in Iran would mean. This is not Iraq. This is not Afghanistan. Iran has a population of 88 million people. It has mountainous terrain that favors defenders. It has a military that, though degraded, still has hundreds of thousands of troops. It has a population that, whatever they think of their government, is not going to welcome American soldiers as liberators. A ground war in Iran would make Iraq look like a skirmish. It would require hundreds of thousands of troops. It would cost trillions of dollars. It would last years, maybe decades. And it would result in American casualties on a scale we haven't seen since Vietnam. And Congress has not authorized any of it. Now, I want to talk about the failure of planning, because this is something that should concern every American regardless of party. When you launch a military operation, you're supposed to have answers to certain basic questions. What's the objective? How will we know when we've achieved it? What happens if the enemy responds in unexpected ways? What's the exit strategy? On day 1, the objective seemed clear. Destroy Iran's nuclear capability. Eliminate the regime's ability to threaten the region. Create conditions for the Iranian people to build a better future. Those are ambitious goals, but at least they were goals. On day 14, I have no idea what the objective is anymore. Is it reopening Hormuz? Is it regime change? Is it defeating every Iranian proxy in the region? Is it simply continuing to bomb until something changes? The administration hasn't said, maybe because they don't know themselves. And here's what's most troubling. The Pentagon apparently didn't anticipate Iran's asymmetric response. They didn't have a plan for what to do if Iran closed Hormuz with drones instead of warships. They didn't wargame the scenario where air power alone couldn't achieve the strategic objective. They planned for victory and didn't plan for what happens when victory doesn't come as quickly as expected. That's not just a failure of imagination. That's a failure of basic military planning. And the American people deserve to know why. Let me talk about what I see as the possible paths forward, because I think you deserve honesty about where this could go. Scenario 1. Diplomatic off-ramp. Someone, maybe the Omanis, maybe the Chinese, maybe even back-channel contacts we don't know about, brokers a ceasefire. Iran agrees to stop attacking commercial shipping. The US agrees to halt offensive operations. Both sides claim victory. Hormuz reopens. Oil prices drop. And we enter a period of tense negotiation about what comes next. This is the best-case scenario, but it requires both sides to want it. And right now, I don't see evidence that either side is ready to back down. Scenario 2. Escalation without ground troops. We continue bombing Iran. We deploy more naval assets to protect shipping. We use submarines and aircraft to hunt down every drone launcher along the coast. It becomes a war of attrition. Oil prices stay elevated. The global economy suffers. American service members remain in harm's way indefinitely, but we avoid a ground war. This is probably the most likely scenario in the near term, but it's not sustainable. Eventually, something gives. Scenario 3. Limited ground operation. We use the Marines to seize specific Iranian coastal positions. Maybe islands in the Gulf. Maybe sections of the Iranian shoreline. We establish a buffer zone. We declare the operation a success. But here's the problem with limited ground operations. They have a way of becoming unlimited. Once American troops are on Iranian soil, extracting them becomes politically and militarily complicated. And Iran will do everything in its power to make us bleed. Scenario 4. Full-scale invasion. This is the nightmare scenario. Something goes wrong. An American ship is sunk. Hundreds of Marines are killed. Public anger demands a decisive response. And we find ourselves committed to the largest ground war since World War II, against an enemy that's been preparing for this fight for 40 years, without clear objectives, without international support, and without any idea how it ends. I don't know which scenario will unfold, but I know this. On day 1, scenario seemed unthinkable. On day 14, it's become imaginable. And that trajectory should concern everyone. Let me close with something personal, because I think it needs to be said. I've been watching this situation unfold with a growing sense of dread. Not because I'm opposed to American strength. I believe in American strength. I deployed it when I sat in that office. But strength without wisdom is just destruction. And wisdom requires planning. It requires anticipating consequences. It requires knowing when to fight and when to negotiate. It requires being honest with the American people about the costs and risks of military action. What I've seen over the past 14 days is strength without wisdom, destruction without planning, escalation without strategy, and now, the potential deployment of American ground forces without congressional authorization, without clear objectives, and without any apparent exit strategy. The American service members on the USS Tripoli didn't choose this mission. They're following orders. They'll do their duty with courage and professionalism, as they always do, but they deserve better than to be sent into harm's way by an administration that seems to be making up strategy as it goes along. So here's what I'm asking. I'm asking Congress to assert its constitutional authority today, not next week, not after something terrible happens. Today, demand briefings, demand a vote, make the administration explain what the objective is, how they plan to achieve it, and how this ends. I'm asking the administration to stop and think. You've made your point. You've destroyed significant portions of Iran's military. You've killed their supreme leader. You've demonstrated American power. Now demonstrate American wisdom. Find a way to de-escalate before this becomes something none of US can control. And I'm asking every American to pay attention. This is not a distant conflict in a faraway land. This is a war that's affecting gas prices in Oklahoma and grocery bills in Ohio. This is a war that could send American sons and daughters into combat. This is a war that's being fought in your name, with your tax dollars, by your military. You have a right to know what's happening. You have a right to demand answers. You have a responsibility to hold your leaders accountable. Day 14 of Operation Epic Fury. That's where we are. 14 days ago, this was supposed to be a limited air campaign. Today, we're sending Marines, and the global economy is in crisis. What will Day 21 look like? Day 30? Day 60? I don't know. And here's the honest truth. I don't think anyone in Washington knows either. And that uncertainty, that lack of planning, that absence of strategy, that's what should keep you up at night. Now that you understand what Day 14 really means, now that you see the escalation that's happening in real time, the question isn't what the administration will do next. The question is what you will do. Will you demand answers? Will you call your representatives? Will you pay attention even when the news is hard to hear? Because that's what citizenship requires. Not just in easy times, but especially in moments like this, when the stakes are highest, when the decisions are hardest, when the future is most uncertain. Thank you for staying with me. Thank you for caring enough to understand what's really happening. And God bless the men and women who are serving tonight on ships and bases across the Middle East, not knowing what tomorrow will bring, but doing their duty anyway. God bless them, and God bless the United States of America. This video represents independent political analysis and commentary for educational purposes. The views expressed are interpretive assessments based on publicly available information and historical parallels, presented through an analytical framework inspired by the perspective of experienced political leadership.